Welcome, everyone, to this second session on CAPE. Last week's session, we covered Truxel. In today's session, we are going to focus on CAPE Advanced. Ask questions to the chat or contact your local salesperson. And stay tuned for upcoming CAPE demonstrations. So if we look at CAPE, you can see that CAPE comes in 3 flavors. Well, if you take the reviewer into account, this is the ability to look at CAPE analysis in CAPE class. But I'd like to focus today on the differences between CAPE Essentials and CAPE Advanced. So scrolling down here, we see that in both versions, Essentials and Advanced have a lot of functionality in common, such as running pallet analysis, truck analysis, even order fulfillment is available in Essentials, knockdown flats, compression strength calculation, bidirectional integration. But down here we see this is where Advanced differs from Essentials. And this is the functionality that we will be covering today. So the case arrange and case design functionality, as well as the case fill option that we have in Advanced. So without further ado, let's dive right into the software. I'm running CAPE 18.1. It's not the latest and greatest. 20 has been released. Here in the program group, you can see the arrange and design group listed. Now, I already created a shortcut here on my home screen, right here in the middle. I displayed the arrange and design group. You can do that by clicking here on the rearrange and then asking that you want that specific arrange design group to be listed on your home screen. I also put the case fill group at the bottom because these are the 3 options that we'll cover today. So arrange allows you to maximize the number of fixed size primary packages into a case, onto a pallet, and onto a truck if you desire so. You can still decide to say yes or no on those. But essentially, we're working with fixed size primary packaging that goes into a case onto a pallet. Now, it doesn't need to be a carton, as you see here in the little picture. We can also use any other shape of primary package. The difference is that some of these shapes will have additional input parameters, right? So in the case of a bag, there's the ability to specify bulge, right? The plus or minus how the bag can expand, or as we stuff it in our secondary. In the case of a cylinder and a drum, obviously we have a diameter or radius. And so that is basically the only difference as far as the type of packaging is concerned. Now, the design group we can access by clicking here on this vary, and this will allow us to vary those primary package dimensions. So that way we're able to maximize the number of primary packages by looking for new sizes, right? And then calculate that case. And then in a third option, I'm going to show you here the case fill, and that's a great use case where you have a set of existing packages, existing cases or trays that you use for shipping. Typically, companies have a limited range of these standard sizes, and then we have products that we want to ship. So the software will then calculate what the best secondary box is. So without further ado, let's start with a typical carton fix going into a secondary. We fire up that specific program by clicking on that Go button, and we are presented now with a screen with three tabs going across right here. So we have our carton, which is our primary. We have our secondary. This is our shipper. And then we have our pallet. Okay, so in the carton, we started with a standard seal end. We call it carton, and these are the dimensions right here, the outside dimensions, OD 6 by 5 by 8. Notice these are imperial dimensions. You can easily change that by going into the input settings and changing to millimeters or kilograms. And also, if you prefer to enter the inside dimensions, you can do that as well up here. So let's just stick with these primary dimensions. We can enter the gross weight. Now, if you're not sure, you can always right-click in this field as well and use this pretty powerful little conversion tool that's built right here into this field. So this allows you to quickly convert from kilograms to pounds or vice versa. And in the case of liquid, you can easily then see also, you know, what the actual weight would be. So my gross weight for this is going to be 2.25 pounds, and the net weight is 2, so that's without the actual packaging. After specifying this, I am now going to look at my case, my secondary, right, my shipper, where, again, I can pick the type of shipper I want to use, whether or not I want to use partition. Let's leave that for what it is. A very important option here now is for me to specify the minimum and maximum amount of primary packages that I want to put in this shipper, right? So if I am pretty flexible, I can give a range here, what I'm doing, right? So in this case, I want anywhere between, you know, a dozen and 2 dozen. Okay. If you really want to restrict this, you can easily say, hey, minimum 12, maximum 12. I want exactly 12 per case. A total case should not exceed 50 pounds in weight, and I'm using a standard 4840 pallet. So again, we've seen in the first demonstration that we can create these pallets and we can use these pallets from a pallet database. So once I specify all these input parameters, I hit the little calculate button, and seconds later, I have my results. Let's look at this results by lifting this cover right here. I can see that the software has decided to put 2, 4, 6 times 2, 12, so 1 dozen primary per case, and then we have 18 cases per load. That would be 2 layers, 9 cases per layer. Notice the efficiency here of my pallet, 88.5% and 66% cube usage. The dimensions of my secondary are 12 by 15 by 16. So that means that the system had the opportunity to stack this primary too high, right? 8 times 2, 16. So now let's say, for example, that because of the nature of the product, I don't want that. I don't want these products to be stacked. How would I prevent that? Keeping in mind that my product is 8 inches high, we can go back here. We can go to our case, and we can look at these case settings. So these case settings are very important because they allow me right here to cap, to set a maximum on the length, the width, and the height of that shipper. So if I would cap this height to 10 inches versus my original 20 inches and recalculate, again, coming up here to this little calculate button, we can see now that the software with these parameters could not find any solution. The reason for that, obviously, is because my length and width are not large enough based on that minimum of 12 units per case. So a couple of things I can do here. I can say, hey, I'm going to expand that right here in the length and width, or I can bring down my minimum to be able to fit that in my case. So we can see now here, if we lift again this cover, that we now have one layer, and in order to get still that minimum quantity here of 12, the system had to create a slightly wider box right here, 20.3 inches by 18 inches. Again, my area usage is not very optimal, 77, and actually dropped. So again, we can see that by changing these parameters, by creating some more restrictions, you can really dramatically influence what that final look is going to be. Okay, so again, changing that to 20 right there and recalculating that, we can see here, again, it didn't do that. So going back here to my case settings, making that bigger didn't have an influence. So what I can also do here to increase my efficiency is allow the box to be rotated in length, width, and height onto the pallet. If I do that, I give my software more freedom, so to speak, to turn these boxes upside down, maybe even. So again, based on the primary object, the primary product that goes on there, you might or might not allow that. But again, I'm able here to increase my area usage by doing so. Notice the height of the pallet right here is capped. It actually only stacked 2 layers high. And the reason for that is because we had a parameter on the pallet that capped that height right here, right there, to 50 inches. So this might be a parameter in your warehousing, but some customers allow to go higher. So if I increase that to 72 inch, again, hit that calculator, you can see now that the system was able to stack 3 of these, increasing my total carton load to 384 units per pallet. So point being, super easy to go back and forth, make changes, and hit that calculate button. Also notice that this is just one of 33 solutions. I can use these little arrows right here to go through these solutions. You can see down here, this is solution number 3. And obviously, I can also open up these details for each of these solutions. But you'll notice that the most efficient one will always be the first one. But feel free to browse through these options, and then using the up and down button, you can see a different type of stacking method for that specific solution. If I want to communicate this final result, I can do so by uploading this into my Cape Cloud and invite other participants to join me in this report. So if I call this BART demo, and we just call this demo 27, we can push this report into Cape Cloud after I log in with my credentials. So let's do that and remember me, so I don't have to key that in if I have another report. Now, in order to view this online, I simply click on the view. I have Cape open right here already in the background, and you can see the result right here. So simply double clicking on that will bring us into that there. Let's do a little refresh because I logged in earlier. There you go. And this is the one, 1027. Give it a moment to load. Double click, and we can already see the graphics at the bottom. And so here you have all the possibilities in order for you to customize this report, even down to the language right here, or change the load profile to change the way the pallet is built with slip sheets or corner posts or straps. And this is something you can also do here in Cape Cloud. You can set the way that the pallet should finally look like. Okay, so that was an example of a standard. And let's go back to the start screen right here, standard arrange group with a fixed size. Let's look at another example where we want to vary, so that would be the design group, where we allow the primary package or primary object to vary in size. So maybe not such a good example, but if we go here through these products, let's say we have a round bottle that we want to put in a case onto a pallet. We hit the go button, and by selecting this vary, you'll notice some additional options in that input field. So first, I'm going to pick my shape. So let's pick a cola bottle here. I know from my vendor that a liter cola bottle is 2.59 by 9.25, like so. And the gross weight is actually 1.19 pounds right there. So you can see this is not such a good idea in order to fit that 1 liter in that bottle. Obviously, I'm going to need a specific height and diameter, and this is very restricted. So maybe not the best example, but let's say you have a custom bottle with a liquid, and you want to figure out what is the most optimal way to ship this. Shipping, allowing right here to change that primary package by putting a variance in there in positive and negative dimensions. So what do I mean with that? I mean with that in the height, or by changing the diameter, I allow this product to vary from the initial dimensions right here to a new dimension. Okay, so let's say I allow my product to vary by 1/2 inch in diameter and 1 inch in height, and that would be both in the positive as well as in the negative direction, plus or minus. And I want the software to do that in increments of a quarter, okay, or in increments of an 1/8 and a quarter in the length direction. So if I do that, and we pick again that same case and that same palette, if I select, I see here my increments were set to 0, so let's change that. I think that was because my fields, my input fields were still in there. So you can see the bulge also, which is a parameter that allows you to a factor that can be added to the object. And not sure, one increment must actually be 0 right there. And is that in the, yes, that's in the dimension increment. So we can see now from my original dimension that I keyed in, the software has changed my primary in order to optimize my secondary. Again, here we have a situation where the software is stacking both on top of one another, and that has to do with my case restrictions, right? Notice a very tapered 5-inch by 15-inch and 20-inch height. So we can easily change, like we did do that in the first example, by going to my case settings and changing this right here and kind of restricting that here, let's say to 15, 15, and 12 in the height to prevent that second layer from stacking. So if I do that, it looks much better now. We per case, 48 cases per load, 4 layers, 12 per layer, efficiency of 87%. Let's see if we can increase that even more by going back and making some pallet changes. So as we were making changes to primary and secondary and putting restrictions into place, we can also experiment here with overhang and underhang. So this will allow my boxes, for example, to overhang by the value that I specify here. Again, this could be something that you would not allow because it might actually damage the goods, or if there's straps going across and underneath that pallet. But it's always a good exercise to do, and in this case, I'm really glad that I can show you that we increased the area usage of this pallet to no less than 104%. That's nobody's going to be able to do any better. Now, obviously, keep in mind we have a slight overhang here, and you can even visually see it. But if that's something that you allow, that can really dramatically increase that area usage. Okay, so that was a second example. Let's go back to the home screen by hitting the back button. We now have a quick look at case fill. So again, case fill is for companies that have a certain number of standard shippers, and we need to figure out how we're going to ship a product using those shippers. So let's hit that go button. Again, we can pick the type of packaging. Let's start with a standard box, and that box, let's say, is an EcoSeal 6x4x6. Right here, the vertical dimension being the height, and the weight 2.2 pounds. Now you can see here in the fill restriction tab all the parameters to dictate which final shipping boxes I will use. Now, how does the software know which standard shippers I have? Well, that is set here in this database. It's called case fill database. And if I show you here quickly in the database, we have this database utility that opens up this small case fill database. And this is the location where you as a company would store all your standard shippers. Now, you can see here in my company, I have 20 standard shippers. There are a few metric ones and imperial ones in there. But let's say that, for this exercise, I want to consider all these different sizes, right? If I want to do that, then I can simply say, hey, I want you to consider all these records, all these 20 different sizes, and find the most optimal one for me, okay? So just hitting that calculate button, the software will come back and it will tell me that from my database with 20 different shapes, case 2 was the most efficient one to take my primary package and ship it. Okay, great. So with that in mind, let's make some changes and let's show you how we can do that. So thinking back of that database, let's say that I want to limit the choice between this one right here and this one right here, between case and entry number 13 and 20. How would I do that? Well, I can come in here and I can say, I want you to consider only between a record number 13 and 20. We can also pick here 10 records. So from that database, I'm going to say, I want you to consider case number 1, case number 5, 7, and 9. And, from these 4 sizes, I want you to show me which one is the best. and the software comes back and tells me that it is the one called box with the primary 6x4x6 dimension right there. So that gives me a product length, width, and height of 1814 by 12. So that is one way in which the software can help you. Now, there are solution. So by allowing multi-dimensional solutions, that would mean that the software from this database can pick not one, but multiple sizes in order to pack up this specific article, this box right here. So if I do that and I hit that calculate button, you can see that the software in this case right here didn't make a real big impact. It's still using case number 2. But if I would start to change some of the input settings, we might be able to influence that. Okay. Now that we're here in the input settings, you can see that as you key in these dimensions, in the case of a box, there typically is not really any slack that's going on. But in case of, let's say we have a bag, let's go back to that first example. So let's say we have a bag size right here. Then the bulge would come in handy because, you know, these products will give in, you know, we can take into account this ballooning effect. So if I pick a chips bag here, for example, you can see that now I can enter my bulge allowance. So I can say, hey, in the length and the width, I'm expecting this to bulge by up to ½ an inch. Okay, and so you can see that the bulge allowance can be set on the primary, as we just did. We can also enter bulge by percentage. So if we do that, we now can enter that in the length, width, and height as a percentage of the total height. Or we can even set it to be a primary, minimum, and maximum bulge. And then you would specify that right here in the minimum and maximum bulge parameters. So this is just an additional parameter that you can specify to get the most accurate type of final pallet solution. So again, calculating this right here with this bulge, by giving this bulge, the system is using a little bit more time. Obviously, we can see in the interface that it has 80 different solutions it is considering. And again, if we lift off this cover, we can see that the software has placed 16 bags in this shipper, and then that shipper goes onto the pallet. So in case if you're wondering how we create these different shapes, they don't look super realistic, but we're only interested in the actual shape. That you can do here. So the software allows you to make any type of shape, as in a rectangular case or a tray, a cylindric shape, bags, gable ends, oval blisters. So those shapes can be created here. Also, from the programs that we discussed today, which was the Arrange and Design group part of Advanced and the Caseflow group, you can see that there are also some other programs we haven't talked about today, and that is the strength calculation. So the strength calculation will calculate before you finalize your final pallet what the crush strength would be based on the material of your shipper, your secondary case. Okay, so this is part also of Essentials, but I wanted to highlight it because it's a very important part to make sure that your products make it safely through transport. calculating global footprint, batch uploading reports into that cloud, having the ability to also connect to other systems through databases and spreadsheets is just another feature of CAPE. And so with that, we've covered today the CAPE Advanced software, in which we focused on the case arrange and case design. For another session, we might also look at the folding cart arrange, allowing you to knock down flats. But that highlights the difference between the advanced and the essentials. So if you want to find out more information, go to our website, search for esko.com, where you can find pricing on these, download, and give this software a whirl. Thank you for your time today, and keep an eye on the calendar. We have these bi-weekly CAPE demonstrations in which we will reveal many more features and advantages in the weeks to come. Thank you again for your time.